You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Well, welcome to another podcast. The Doctor Is In a podcast. Always happy to be with you, and today is going to be no exception to that, and we're going to have a very interesting topic to you, I think. I think you'll appreciate some of the studies that came out in the last few weeks that I'm going to pontificate on. And I'm Dr. Martin Sr., by the way, and this is podcast number 204 of The Doctor Is In. We always appreciate your feedback, and we'll always encourage that. We want to look at this today. 3 new studies that came out about the gut. So the gut. What did Hippocrates say that 2,000 years ago that 80% of all diseases started in the gut? And I think Hippocrates was a lot more right than he thought he was. And we're starting to see that, especially in this day and age where we're able to, I always tell people, look, if you just make microscopes more powerful and telescopes more powerful, and you're going to see a lot of things that you couldn't see before. And it's the same thing inside the human body. We're finding things that we didn't even know. My son, Tony Jr., Dr. Tony Jr., was telling me the other day they found a new ligament in the knee that they didn't even know existed. I said, how can that be? It's not like we don't have x-rays or MRIs or whatever. He said, well, I don't know. They found another ligament in the body. And in the gut, we know that the gut, and there was 3 studies that came out in the last few weeks that I want to bring together here today on the Doctor Is In podcast. The gut, we know, and this is one of the studies that came out, it just plays a significant role in chronic diseases. So you look at all chronic diseases, including cancer and cardiovascular disease and lung. You know what is the number one, still is today, the number one killer in cancer? If I give you a little quiz question, what is the number one cancer that kills people the most today? The most prevalent cancer in the world today is what? Yeah, I don't know if you got this or not, but the answer is lung cancer. So even today, lung cancer, and that can be for a variety of factors, including there's 100,000 new chemicals have been created since World War I, and the vast majority of them are found in our environment. They're found in our kitchens. They're found in our homes. They're found in our workplaces. We drink them. They're in the ocean, they're everywhere, and they are disrupting our hormones, and they can get into our lungs. We breathe these things in, and so unless you plan on leaving the planet, you probably have no possibility of getting away from all of these chemicals. They're part of our life, and, for a lot of good things, I guess, but also some things that really get at the body. So lung cancer, but remember, leaky gut, leaky lungs. This is why the vast majority of people that have asthma, and this comes from the gut originally. And I want to tie these things in. We'll see it as we go through these studies. So one of the studies just confirmed what we already knew, is that the gut plays a significant role in chronic diseases. And when I talk about the gut, I talk about primarily the bacteria in your gut. If you want to go to our Facebook, look at a video that I did called The Invisible War. I think we've gotten almost, I'm not sure, 300,000 or 400,000 views of this video that I did. And that was on the invisible war that goes on in our gut. So the gut has about 3 pounds of bacteria in there. And everybody's gut is a little bit different, but at the end of the day, you want to have as many good or better or even more good bacteria than bad, and that's called you win. So the significance of that is when your gut gets disrupted, when the bacteria gets disrupted, it's like an ecosystem. You can change the Amazon forest and that by just taking one thing out of that ecosystem, and now it's not balanced properly. If you take, I'm sure if you took the cougars out of there or the leopards or whatever, and now you're going to have an imbalanced system because they keep each other at check. I mean, there's a reason for these things, and it's the same thing in our gut, that the gut, as long as there's a good measure of good bacteria versus bad bacteria, then your risk of developing chronic diseases are diminished. The second study, and it's interesting because I'm going to spend more time on the second study, but I want to just put it out there, is that there's more evidence. Here's the study, that there's more evidence that autism is linked to gut bacteria. So that's important today, because what is autism now? They're seeing that 1 out of 50 boys? I mean this, guys. The first time I ever heard about autism, I never studied autism when I was in school in the 1970s. I graduated in 1974. And today, autism is 1 out of 50 kids, and boys especially. And we're going to talk about that because there's more evidence that autism is linked to unhealthy gut bacteria. So people look at bacteria as being bad things, but bacteria, folks, listen, we live around bacteria all of our lives. There's bacteria everywhere. There's bacteria in the air. There's bacteria on the surfaces of almost every little bit of furniture. It's in your bathroom. It's in your kitchen. And that's all right. You know what? Don't over clean. Because, your body knows what to do with bacteria. It's when you get out of balance between bad and good that this creates what we call a dysbiosis. And this can, they're now showing that this is one of the primary reasons for autism today. Isn't that incredible? Third one came out, and this again is, I'm going to link it. C-section babies, or cesarean-delivered babies, have different gut bacteria than babies that go through the vaginal canal. This is a fact. This came out. This study shows that C-section babies have different gut bacteria than vaginal. When they go through the canal, these babies go through the canal. And so, again, just understand that, look, a lot of times, modern medicine is wonderful. It is, because I think they overdo C-sections, but at the end of the day, a lot of times both mommy and baby could have died before C-sections, and they could be breached or whatever. And C-sections can be a wonderful thing. I'm not against them, but the facts are. Who was the guy in Dragnet? Now, you guys probably don't even know this. Dragnet was when I was a kid, there was a detective show, and the star of the show would go up to was taking evidence and would say, just give me the facts, ma'am. Just give me the facts. I remember that as Dragnet. But the facts are, and this is proven, C-section babies have different gut bacteria, and C-section babies pick up more hospital bacteria than those born vaginally, including those that are resistant to antibiotics. So listen, it's always better, ladies, what's a man like me telling a woman what to do? But I gotta tell you just what the facts are, ma'am. And that is C-section babies have different gut bacteria, and they pick up more hospital. You know what? I always tell people, look, the most dangerous place to go in the world is not Afghanistan, and it is not Ethiopia, even though those can be bad places because of the wars that are going on, or Iraq. Well, probably not Iraq as much today, but as Iran. I don't think you go to a vacation to North Korea. You're like, let me just go to North Korea on my vacation. But one of the worst places to go is the local hospital because of the amount of bacteria that are there and the amount of C. difficile, these bacteria that are very, very resistant, superbugs, resistant to antibiotics. And this is becoming a big, big problem today. This is why, like, sometimes routine surgeries that are done and a routine hospital visit can end up to be catastrophic. And I'm not telling you to shut hospitals down, of course not. But all I'm saying is it's well established that there's a lot of bad bacteria, and one of the most dangerous places that you can go to, especially usually when you go to the hospital, unless you're going to visit someone there, is, you're going and your immune system is already compromised, and then they got these superbugs because one of the biggest reasons, two reasons. One, of course, sick people go there, you're going to have more bugs. But two more reasons are, one, they overuse antibiotics. And listen, antibiotics can save your life. I understand why they do it. Antibiotics are wonderful. Don't get me wrong. One of the greatest discoveries of the 20th century are antibiotics. But the problem is that they develop bacteria have an intelligence, and they develop resistance to these antibiotics because they're overused. And, doctors oftentimes give you an antibiotic when it's a viral infection, and you've got to be very, very careful about that. And you got a bad infection, you need an antibiotic. But if it's viral, antibiotics don't do anything except make bacteria become supercharged, and they become very difficult to treat. So C-section babies pick up more hospital bacteria than those are born vaginally. Study that came out this week. And so let's just talk about that for a second, okay? So I want to come back to autism. And, a lot of people try and pin me down many, many times. They try and do it because we're popular on social media, and of course on my videos and Dr. Martin and the Martin Clinic, we love to give out information, and we're an information-based clinic. The term doctor means teacher. So teach. And so if you come into my office as a patient, first of all, you are going to get a rant. You are going to get taught, because doctor means teacher. I try and teach people nutrition. I try and break down their disorder and tell them what could have caused that, and more importantly, how to change your lifestyle and what to do. But the idea is that when people, because I do a lot of social media and podcasts, and people are trying to get me to talk about vaccines and what do they do. And listen, I don't want to die on the hill of vaccines, so I don't talk about it too much, other than, I don't want to tell people not to get vaccines. I never do that. I want people to be healthy. So if vaccination is something that you really want to do, then you should do it, absolutely, and understand why you are doing it. But listen, because a lot of times vaccines are linked to autism. And, we're talking about that. And I don't know about the vaccines. Here's what I do know. When I was a kid, I got 2 vaccines. And what are they giving out now in the first couple of years of life? They're giving I think it's 69 or 70 vaccines. Is that a good thing? Again, that's for you to decide. But where I want to go is where the science is unequivocal, where the science is pointing that autism is now what they're calling leaky gut. Autism is a gut disorder. It's a bacterial disorder in the gut where you have more bad than good. And, again, I think we made the case with these 3 studies today. But let me just go back to autism, and I want to talk about something that perhaps you've never heard before, and I want to just go over both mommy and baby. And these are stats that are available, and if you look at it, and there's 4 things that mommy has, and with generally 4 common denominators that mummy of an autistic child is pretty well established. And here they are. The mummy of an autistic child usually, had a C-section. So mummies that had a C-section, when baby was being delivered, the baby was more susceptible to autism. I think it's somewhere around the 50% mark. So it's got to be a factor somehow. And, we tried to tie that in today, where C-section babies pick up more hospital bacteria and they put a dysfunction to their microbiome. So mummy of an autistic child usually had a C-section. Secondly, they were on antibiotics. Well, of course, if you have a C-section, you're going to be put on antibiotics. But a lot of mummies had antibiotics in the previous year of their pregnancy or even during their pregnancy. It's much more common. And thirdly, if you have a C-section, unless I'm wrong, and I don't think I'm wrong, it's just going to be common. If you have a C-section, they have to do surgery. And guess what? You're going to be put on a course of antibiotics. Of course, they don't want you to develop a secondary infection, and therefore mummy is put on antibiotics, and mummy might be breastfeeding. Mummy should be breastfeeding, but generally mummy has been on antibiotics. So that's a factor. C-section is a factor. Is it everything? I'm not saying it is. With autism, I'm just saying that there seems to be a real connection. And thirdly, gestational diabetes. That mummy that developed gestational diabetes during pregnancy, they were more susceptible to having an autistic baby. Interesting, isn't it? That sugar, diabetes, is a factor in autism. And just the facts. And mummy who has a bad diet, mummy who is a carboholic, mummy who is obese, has a higher risk of having an autistic baby. Those are just the facts. And then baby, we talked a little bit about, came through C-section. Generally, autistic babies were given antibiotics within their first couple of years of life. And so autistic babies, facts are oftentimes, more often than not, they were put on antibiotics, either for ear infection or upper respiratory infection. When babies, they get an ear infection, that baby's screaming blue murder. You can understand mommy and daddy. They're just, do you want to see a baby suffer? But I like what my son-in-law, who is an emergency physician, has often told me, is that with the way he treats babies with an ear infection, is doesn't give them an antibiotic. He gives them some Tylenol pain killing, and generally will treat them with an antihistamine to take the inflammation out of the ears, because I'm quoting him now, he told me that the vast majority of ear infections within the first couple of years of birth are babies who have a virus, and that's just another fact. So babies are more susceptible when they're on antibiotics in their first couple of years of life to becoming autistic. I always say that autism starts in the gut, in the placenta, mommy's placenta, because of her dysbiosis. And I'm more keen on that, because gestational diabetes would affect the microbiome, and so would antibiotics in mummy, and the C-section and the bad diet and the obesity, all factors. And baby that have been put on antibiotics and haven't been breastfed. And again, the importance of breastfeeding. And, listen, I understand that, sometimes it's just not possible or whatever for baby to be breastfed. But I'll tell you, there's not a doctor, I think, in the universe left, unless I'm mistaken, that wouldn't agree that breastfeeding is absolutely the best route to go for mommy giving the baby, the colostrum and the lactoferrin that just builds the immune system comes from breastfeeding. There's nothing like it. In the first 3 months, especially, the baby develops their immune system. And this is where I think, in a lot of ways, where the baby's disruption, if it hasn't already taken place within the placenta of mommy, gets disrupted in the first 3 months when they're not breastfed, they're not given the colostrum, they're not given the bacteria that they can pick up even on mommy's breast that is so, so, so good for baby. And the lactoferrin, which is a tremendous anti-cancer and anti-natural, builds the immune system of the baby. And, it's interesting, isn't it, that when you talk about autistic children, which is an epidemic today, that you see this link now to the gut and to the digestive tract. So, these fascinating studies. And so what do you do? Well, first of all, I always recommend probiotics, a broad spectrum probiotic. You know that. I talk about it. I don't think I go through a podcast or a video hardly ever without talking one of my favorite supplements. And you know what, guys? It's not found in yogurt, so don't rely on yogurt yogurt is a marketing tool of the food industry to try and get people thinking they're taking probiotics. There's not enough probiotics for a mouse in yogurt, and plus it's usually full of sugar and crap, and I'm not a big yogurt fan at all. Greek plain is a little bit better, but you're not taking it for probiotics. You're taking it because you like it and you like the calcium in it, I guess, or whatever. But there's such better sources of calcium that are found in cheese, in my opinion. And so there's a big advantage to taking broad spectrum probiotics. So if you're listening, tell any prospective mother, if you want to have a good chance that your baby, it's a big fear today, isn't it, with pregnancy, and you don't want an autistic child for sure. And, not that we don't love autistic children. We do, of course. But if you can prevent autism, of course, you're going to do it. And one of the ways, and I'm convinced of this, is mommy, while she is pregnant, before she is pregnant, during pregnancy, after pregnancy, breastfeeding, give that baby the probiotics. And the more probiotics, the more broad spectrum they are. By, what I mean by broad spectrum is that they have over 10 different strains of bacteria. So mommy needs to get on a broad spectrum probiotic. And, mom, if you can, have a natural childbirth. And I think most women, of course, that's their goal, is to have a natural childbirth. And I think, even the OBGs and they're looking now and they're trying to get doctors to rethink this C-section because of the different areas and of medicine. But one of the things they're talking about now is the link between the C-section babies and the fact that they're more susceptible to not only hospital infections, but susceptible, it seems, to becoming autistic. So thanks for listening. If you have any feedback at all, we're happy to try and answer all your questions and give us some feedback on what you would like us to cover, and we enjoy that, and we'll talk to you soon.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.